Hello, welcome to our look ahead to what the papers will be bringing us tomorrow. With us, recovered from his Christmas cold, Neil Midgley, media writer at the Daily Telegraph. Well, I hope so, anyway. And for the first time, entrepreneur Scott Fletcher.
Thank you. Good
to be here. Thank you very much for coming on a Friday night.
You're very welcome.
Is dedication.
Friday night in London. Yeah.
I know. Wow, what a treat. Let's take a look at those front pages then. And the Mail's headline, Champagne perks of NHS drugs watchdog NICE. It says that the body has spent around £115,000 on expenses which have come out of the NHS budget. The paper says these splurges are coming at a time when NICE is banning new drugs on the grounds that they are too expensive. The Express has a positive headline with the good news that we're all going to live longer. According to the Office for National Statistics, we're going to live an extra 8 years. That's for men, means you'll be 87, and women will be 90. The Independent continues its theme of the corruption of Britain with a secret report into how they say the criminal justice system has been infiltrated by organised crime gangs. The Independent's sister paper, The Eye, has the battle begins for the soul of the NHS, pitting Labour and the Conservatives against each other as the two parties start to set out their stalls ahead of the general election. The Telegraph has a picture of the French president's alleged mistress, the actress Julie Gaillet, in a backless red dress. The Times also has a picture of the same actress, more soberly dressed this time, with the headline, Oui, Mr President. It also has Labour's plan to improve the teaching profession. And The Guardian leads with benefits chaos will lead to a new housing crisis. Showing no favouritism at all, we will start with the Daily Telegraph. And several stories here. It's just because they've got so many good stories on the front to do with Neil being here. The first one then, 2 new cities in secret Tory plan. The accusation that David Cameron has suppressed a report that calls for thousands of new homes. Do we need thousands of new homes? Many people would say we do, Scott.
Well, I think we do. I mean, you know, we've got what 10 million new people in the country over the last few years, and rising. You know, going to be 70 million within the next 5 years or so. I think we you know, it's about time we put something in place and look more strategically at the way we're looking at these things.
And also the nature of family units as well. Often people are living singly, or they just need the housing needs have changed, haven't they?
Absolutely. In some proper planning, you know, in business we plan many years ahead, and you know, government needs to do that, and I think this is an opportunity for them to do so.
I mean, there's obviously something going on between the two sides of the coalition here. I think this is being pushed by the Lib Dems in government and the Tories trying to push it to one side. The Lib Dems saying we're in favour of garden cities, which are obviously, you know, big sprawling suburbs in any other language, and the Tories already facing some electoral difficulties in the home counties, which is where these places will be supposed to be.
Because that's where the greatest pressure is, isn't it, for houses, particularly in the South East, where house prices have just gone, well,
London and the South East, yeah. But obviously in the home counties, in Buckinghamshire in particular, on the proposed route of HS2 up through the Chilterns, the Tories are already facing some electoral wobbles up there, and the idea that they might concrete over another big swathe of the countryside to build suburbs will probably not go down well with Tory voters.
True, but if we've got that many people needing homes, we need to address it. And you know, immigration is uncontrolled at the moment, and we have to do something about it.
We've got this issue, haven't we? You can't just plonk houses in a place, and even if you find the right site for it, you've got to have all the amenities that go with it, haven't you? It's not just about houses.
Absolutely, and that's one of the issues. That's why you need to have a plan and not just build houses willy-nilly. You know, schools are under massive pressure at the moment.
And hospitals too.
Absolutely.
Well, an airport capacity, there's another great decision that the government really should take, is where are we going to have more airport capacity in the southeast of England? And the problem is there are no votes in making these decisions, in making sensible long-term decisions which cost a lot of money and alienate NIMBYs. There are no votes in that, so of course governments shy away from taking them.
Let's take a look at another story on the front of the Telegraph here. UKIP will target Labour seats in the north, says Nigel Farage. The paper quotes him as saying that the Conservative Party is dying in the north because it's failed to connect with ordinary people. Yeah. But are UKIP, Neil, going to 2 men from the north of England, different parts, different sides of the Pennines, admittedly, but are UKIP going to be the party that appeals to the people who don't like the Conservatives?
Well, I think it's probably a bit of a stretch to imagine that there's going to be a swathe of whatever colour UKIP has, pink or whatever.
Purple, I think.
Purple,
it is.
In the electoral map come 2015. I mean, it is shocking to me to see how far the Tory party has fallen in the north.
I think in the north, I mean, you know, being from Manchester, brought up a Labour boy, socialist roots, that's definitely how Manchester feels and still feels. But the conversations down the pubs now, UKIP are being talked about. Nobody would ever vote Tory in the north. But
and they appeal to you, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I have, my political views are very much about liberty and socialism and trying to do the two together, but not with massive government. So I'm anti the EU, for instance, because I want to control what we're doing for Britain. And we talked just earlier about the two cities. One of the reasons we've got to do that is the mass immigration that we've got. So these things have to be talked about sensibly and not politicified really and planned on the long term.
Well, I think it's fascinating. When I was growing up, I was in Leeds North East when I grew up. That was Keith Joseph's constituency. He was the arch Thatcherite. And it was a safe Tory seat in those days, and it's been a safe Labour seat ever since the 1997 election. And the Tories do need, what Farage is right about is that there does need to be a viable alternative for voters in northern cities other than Labour.
But when you've got a party like this, like UKIP, because they are divisive, aren't they? For a lot of people, sometimes there'll be strategic voting, even encouraged by some of the main parties.
Agreed, but I think when you've got the status quo of a two-party system over a long period of time, myself, I'm 40 years old. The vote on the EU, or at the time, which was a free trade area, not a government set up. It's in 1973, the year I was born. So when you look at change, it's going to be divisive in some way, and people want change at the moment. It's what I'm feeling. They want something different, and that's what UKIP's bringing. Now, if the mainstream parties can take on board some of their policies, and things may change, and people like myself may look towards the mainstream parties, but until they do, then I think we're going to have there's a big cohort of people, particularly in the north, actually, who are saying, who's representing me?
Let's look at another paper. Daily Mail. Champagne perks of NHS drugs watchdog. This is NICE, which decides which drugs we get to be treated with. Accused of spending thousands of pounds on hotels, a John Lewis shopping spree and champagne, racking up credit card bills of £115,000. It's not a lot of money in the greater scheme of things. It's not going to buy a lot of drugs, Scott, is it? But it's the message it sends.
It's the
People
principle,
don't like
I think,
it,
isn't it? And I was going to say the same thing. It's £106 billion budget, and we're talking about £115,000 over 2 years. It's 0.000 something percent. It's nothing. But you look at the numbers when you drill down. £5,000 on luxury hotels over 2 years. That's £200 a month. It's one hotel a month. So I just don't really buy the story. I think we've got to be focusing more on what the drugs are costing. Why aren't we giving them to the people that need them?
What Scott and I were discussing is the business of claiming expenses, because obviously these are expenses that people are incurring, hopefully in the course of their work for NICE. And the statistic that did stand out for me further down the story is that 137,000 credit cards are issued to government employees by the government.
I have no idea how they manage that, by the way. Can you imagine? 137,000 credit cards.
Obviously,
who checks the bills?
Yeah, exactly.
When you're claiming expenses, as an employee, obviously, it's far better to have the money on the employer's credit card and for them to have to claim it back from you rather than have it on your credit card.
In the private sector, you would never have, you would put it on your own and claim it back. And the bigger numbers, it's £1.1 billion across those 137,000. So actually, that's maybe where the story is, instead of maybe focusing on a few hotels for NICE.
Let's look at the Indie. Corruption of Britain. A secret report, the paper says, in this exclusive by their investigations reporter Tom Harper, looking back to 10 years to stuff that was happening, apparently the infiltration of some of our sort of big institutions, state organisations by criminals. Yes,
don't panic, I think, probably is the message here, because this is a report that's 10 years old, so we're not, which is only just coming out. This is why it's a new story. This is Operation Tiberius at Scotland Yard, suspected in 2003 that juries were being nobbled by infiltration by organised criminals, that revenue and customs, both here and abroad, that the gangs were getting their own people to be employed by HMRC, and therefore obviously turning a blind eye or whatever to the criminal scams that were going on. The question that it raises, which is why, of course, it's on the front page of the paper, is, well, how much of this is still going on today? And is there another report on somebody's desk at Scotland Yard now?
Because a difficult week, Scott, for some of the organisations that are implicated in this, this very week.
Yeah, Plebgate we've got going on just today. I think, again, as a man in the street looking at this sort of story, you know, the institutions that you grow up trusting. You know, certainly the past 10 years, you know, we don't trust them anymore, do we? And this is just another story that undermines that trust. And I think, you know, it's about time that people in public office took it seriously, to be honest.
It smacked to me of the storyline to Our Friends in the North, the BBC drama that was set in the 60s. That's the sort of impression I got from it. We're going to go back to the Telegraph and also the Times now, if we can, because they're both looking at the story to do with François Hollande, the French president, and his alleged affaire, spelt in French for me, on auto cue very nicely with the E on the end.
Enchanté, mademoiselle.
Merci, monsieur. With this actress, Julie Gaillet, has hit several of the front pages here. The Times shows her, Julie, giving a very Gallic shrug. Is she looking a Gallic shrug? I suppose that's quite a Gallic shrug. Whereas the Telegraph, well, she's barely covered up, is she? With a very glamorous picture of her there, showing a little tattoo on her derrière. We love these stories, don't we, here? But in France, they sort of keep them under wraps until social media got hold of it.
And I think they've got stronger privacy laws, as you understand. But you know, it's you look at this story and you ask yourself, where's the proof? Because there's as far as I understand it, there's a video with a guy with a helmet on, going into a.
But he hasn't denied it.
He hasn't denied it.
He hasn't
no,
denied
but it's great PR, isn't it? I mean, would you
well,
deny
is it? Not when you're so low in the polls.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, can you imagine if David Cameron was photographed on a scooter, a moped, turning up at his mistress's house, a mistress alleged mistress, who was as glamorous as this, and that his security guard was allegedly
popping out for croissants.
Going to the local bakery to get some sustenance for the alleged
Greg's, though,
pair.
wouldn't it? Be Greg's.
Yeah, Greg's pasties, absolutely, yeah. With the tax.
With the tax, yeah.
That's right, fully paid. But can you really ask for privacy when you're the president of France in 2013? I mean, the 2014. Gosh, you see, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. We just have a very different attitude towards it here, don't we?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think if David Cameron were having an affair, this is all fiction in my mind, I think there would be a prurient interest certainly from the red top papers, from the quality papers. I mean, I don't think you can expect privacy, even though clearly this is a private matter. If there is going to be a right to privacy, unless he's being a hypocrite by preaching family values, or unless
but he was supposed to be Mr. Clean, Mr. Normal, Monsieur Normal, wasn't he?
Is this Monsieur Hollande?
Yes.
Well, I mean, he's just doing a terrible job, isn't he? That's the bottom line.
It's not looking great at the moment. Let's look at the Daily Express. This is apparently good news. Britons are going to live for 8 years longer. What if you don't want to?
Well, I have to say...
and how are we going to afford it? I mean, some of the other headlines are talking about the cost of the NHS and how we're going to privatise it and everything else, and yet we're going to live 8 years longer, and we have no way and no plan to afford the pensions of the NHS.
I mean, imagine, I'm going to have to work till I'm 70 here anyway to, doing the papers when I'm...
I'm looking forward to being here with you, Martin.
We're going to have to be.
We may be underwater by then anyway.
Well, that brings us... Thank you very much. Let's put it nicely on the tee, because that's Paul Daniels. You're going to like this, but not a lot.
Does he like the weather?
No, I don't think he does. Our flood nightmare, that's his home. It looks like a caravan stuck on the, on a lake. And it's a beautiful home that Paul and Debbie, Debbie McGee and Paul Daniels live in down by the Thames. I mean, I love the idea of living by a river, but not so much these days, Scott.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm 500 metres up from the nearest river, so I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah.
I think there's another story behind this about whether is this down to climate change, is it not? There's a big debate about that at the moment. I think
and flood defences. And the cost of those.
The cost of those with austerity. These are things we've got to address.
We haven't got any more time to look at the papers for 2014. I'm a journalist, Scott and Neil will be back for another look at those and some other of the front pages in just over half an hour's time at 11:30. Stay with us here on BBC News, because at 11 o'clock, calls for Andrew Mitchell to return to the Cabinet after a police officer admits lying about the Plebgate affair. Coming up next, though, it's time for Sports Day.